Hello. So my friend Matt and I are making this spec commercial for this rum brand called Clever Fox. I had the idea and the product for a long time, but now I actually have the time to do it and the resources, so it's finally time to make this thing happen. So how do I go from a tiny idea to full-on execution? One word: treatment. A treatment is essentially a document or a deck where you take your idea as a director and how you would approach a specific project. They use them for shorts, features, music videos, commercials. It's basically just a way that you can say exactly what your approach to it would be. It can range from like bullet points all the way to like full-on 70-page decks. Now, I've made a ton of these, but I'm like no means an expert. But luckily, I got a guy. His name is Oren Kaplan. He's a host of the podcast I produce, Just Shoot It, which if you're not listening to and you like stuff like this, I highly recommend you pause this video, go subscribe, and then come back and finish this. But even more importantly for these purposes, he's a working commercial director. Has worked with people like Rebel Wilson, Popeyes, Capital One, a ton of work. And with each of those things, he's had to make and develop a treatment.
I work primarily in commercials right now, so every treatment is basically me pitching my vision of a commercial, like a 30-second commercial, which is like the ridiculous part is how can you write 60 pages about 30 seconds of screen time? I think of it as a magazine, there's a cover that has a title, it starts to show off some tone, and then there's an intro. I talk about how I connect with the project, and then I kind of go into the tone and the feeling that I think people should get, and then I talk about like the people that this campaign is for and the big idea and how in my approach to it, and then I'll usually break down the script or the scripts. I'll be like, okay, we open on a shot of Tyler. It looks like he's podcasting, but all of a sudden the camera pulls back and we realize he's in a studio on Mars, and I'll just like kind of write shot by shot. And then usually that breakdown of a 30-second commercial, I always think of it as about like 15 to 20 shots. And then I'll have at least 3 images per page where I'm describing these shots. And I usually describe them in between 3 to 5 pages. So 5 pages is me just describing what the commercial will look like with images.
Right.
And usually there's a lot of animated GIFs too. So kind of camera moves, colors, tone, palette, performance, casting. I'm trying to infuse all of that stuff in there. I assume that people will read up to there. And at that point, they know like 95% of what my plan is to make this commercial.
Right.
Prioritize what's the most important question and what's the least important question for the audience. So, for instance, I did a Target commercial this past year, and they told us, here's the store that you need to shoot at. So finding locations is not a big deal for that. But now I'm working on this tropical themed commercial, and we're trying to find like a tropical environment. And so that's super important for them. So I'll just that's like the first thing I'll talk about after the breakdown. Right. And I really I'm trying to answer the questions that I think they'll have in the order that I think they'll have them. And I also try to structure my treatments in the way that you're structuring your show, like pre-production. Like, here's how we're going to, here's the big idea, here's the approach, here's how we're going to cast it. Here's how we're going to, here's the team I'm going to bring on to execute it. And then I talk a bit about like actually shooting it. We're going to use this equipment or this thing, or it would be cool to have like a movie, do this impossible shot, whatever it is. And then I'll go into a little bit more post-production, editing, music, color correction.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I know you're primarily making them like for pitching, right? Like, this is what I do. This is why I'm perfect for the job. When you're like talking to your like DP and like that side of your crew, do you give them also like a mood board of the same stuff? Or is it more just like they look at it and you talk about it and you figure it out?
I try to design like my pitch decks and my treatments to serve 3 purposes. Number 1 is to give to an agency or a client or whoever might hire me, and they should be able to skim it in like less than 5 minutes. They don't need to read the whole thing, but they should be able to skim it and get an idea of my point of view. The second purpose is I think of it as like a PowerPoint presentation, and it's when I present it, I want to have an image on each page that is easy for me to talk about and easy for the people that I'm pitching it to look at and understand why it's there. Like every time I put an image and I talk about it, I'll be like, oh, you see this image of this talking bird. I thought it would be funny if this line that we don't know who delivers, from off screen is actually this bird flies in and delivers it,
Right.
And here's a good example of how that happens. So I'm always like, the images are helping guide, they're like my guideposts to pitch the thing. The third most important thing is it's a little bit of a blueprint for the production team. I send it to my storyboard artist, my cinematographer, my production designer. No, honestly, it's a little tricky because a lot of times I recommend production designers and cinematographers in my treatment, and then we hire someone that's not recommended. So
Totally.
I have to be like, hey, Tyler, thanks for shooting my thing. I'm sorry I didn't mention you in the treatment. I mentioned 4 other DPs.
Yeah, totally.
I like to give it to them and say, hey, you don't need to look at this. Like, the agency didn't like this thing, or this part got cut from the script. But I really like this image. Do you think we can achieve something like this? Or I really like this wardrobe. Or, the casting directors will see it and try to get a tone and performance out of it and stuff. So So it is third. It's like a distant third. It's like a tool for the crew.
Totally.
That hopefully be on the same page as me.
I think I know what your answer is going to be for this question, but like after listening to every episode of Just Shoot It. But like, what do you think is like the secret sauce that'll get you the job, like in your experience?
Well, I don't think there's a secret sauce that will get you the job. I think it's always going to be a combination of you're real, which is probably potentially the most important thing that you don't have a ton of control over.
Right.
You can control what you show them of your work, but you can't control what other people's work is.
Totally.
Right? Like, it's hard to get an edge there because usually when you're pitching against other people, everyone has similar reels. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is the phone call, talking to them and showing them that you're good at collaborating, taking their ideas and building on them and saying like, ooh, I love that. How about we twist this? Or pointing out like a nagging thing that's been bothering them in their creative content and finding a solution for it you can bring, and that hopefully you're communicating that on the call with them and making them feel like, ooh, we have to have Tyler. Like, he knows how to shoot beer cans in basements,
Totally.
And we have this whole section of basements and we were worried. We had no idea how it's going to work.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is just having a treatment that has a lot of really high quality images and references, and that has a consistency of tone.
Right.
And it has a point of view that is building on something. I mean, my personal approach, like the secret sauce question is just to find how I personally connect with something.
Right.
And it can just be totally different. I have a dog, so if it's a dog, I'll talk about what a dog means to me,
Yeah,
I have a family. I go on vacations. If it's vacation related, I'll talk about what I love about vacations. So just finding that point of connection so that they know that you're not just like making beautiful shots, but you are kind of living the story of whatever project it is.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to kind of like fire on all cylinders, to get work in this industry. But it's hard. it's really hard to get all those elements, especially when you're starting out, because you kind of have nothing,
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Just shoot it.
Yeah. Do you want to give a Just Shoot It plug for the YouTube video?
Yeah, you should check out the podcast Just Shoot It. We talk about filmmaking, screenwriting, directing, and everything film related. So yeah, wherever podcasts are found.
Nailed it. That's perfect.
Thanks.
This thing will be the North Star of the entire project. So now that we have this, we can go on and start doing the rest of pre-production. Now, if we're getting gear, general crew, art department, costume, anything like that, we really only have 3 more things to put together. It is much better to make mistakes on paper than when you have an entire crew and cast waiting for you to make a decision. So if you learn anything from this, just take the time to plan everything out, like really, really well. It'll save you so much of a headache when you're on set or like in post. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you like stuff like this, please hit the like button. It's free and helps me out a ton. If you want to see more stuff like this, please hit subscribe, and I'll see you later.